Hey, Thomas, thanks for being on the show today.
Sure.
Before we get into your background, I had to represent my Cardinals because
Absolutely.
you're obviously a designer for the NFL. Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
your background and history in design?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. So currently I'm the director of user experience design for the National Football League. So that's taking care of their digital portfolio, which is pretty vast. So we have both the NFL app, we have, of course, NFL.com. We, of
Yep.
course, also have the fantasy app and the fantasy website. We have a pretty sophisticated CTV or connected television product. So that's your Apple TVs and your Rokus, as well as I think we're in on 7 or 8 different devices at this point.
Okay.
And then we, of course, have, the 32 clubs, as we call them internally, the 32 teams. They each have their own websites. And that's something that we advise on and at times, support. So it's a pretty vast portfolio. We also have a labs group internally where we work on, how can we improve the fan experience, 2 to 5 years out using newer technology. And something that we just worked on was putting a 5G experience into our stadium.
You're also a teacher at UCLA
Yep.
online. I've been teaching UX. What are you telling students these days about the field, which changes so quickly?
Absolutely, yeah. So I worked with UCLA Extension to sort of establish a certificate program.
Mhm.
It takes most students about 1.5 to 2 years to complete. It's a pretty strenuous program. I personally think it's not a master's degree program by any means, but it is a little bit at that level. But when we have incredible instructors, they're all master practitioners in the field, and they really put people through their paces. So we've had really great success with people graduating from the program, and then finding positions at the most prominent companies in the world. But more than anything, I think, to your question, what we really focus on more is an understanding of the user experience design as a domain, as a basically subject of practice. It is a craft, but it's also a matrix of understanding. So I think one of the hard things to get is that it's actually a series of specialties. It is not a generalist role. So there's essentially 3 core functions in it. So there is the user experience research portion, or the design research as it's more being referred to currently. That includes both qualitative and quantitative social science techniques. And what you're really trying to do there is really understand what the needs are of that end user. And as we know, UX design, its mantra is to be the voice of that end user. Then you have the actual design portion thing. So a UX designer is someone that, based on hearing the needs of that end user, provides a solution. That solution might be visual, but also might not, right? It could be voice, it could be agentive, it could be
Yep.
zero UI. Maybe it's not even digital. I think that's the other part that's often thoroughly misunderstood is UX design is most dominant in the digital space, or software space, but it's not exclusively where it's practiced, right? And then the last thing is really strategy. So UX strategy or product strategy. How do you effectively take your insights and your solution and then apply it to a product to market fit so that you do actually accomplish the business's goals too? And I think that is pretty complicated for everyone to grasp, because you want a job, right? So you're like, what am I called? What do I do? But your individual talent and skill slots into that matrix, right?
Let's touch on the NFL.
Sure.
I'm a fan. I'm on your site, and so is my dad and
Awesome.
grandparents and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Oh man.
how are you taking in all these factors of varying fans?
That's probably my great joy at working at the NFL, is the contact with the fans. It is an incredible honor. I love our fans and I love talking to them. It's unbelievable to get to work on a brand and a product that is, used or has some affinity by a third of the entire country, right? So
Wow.
plus minus 150 million fans self-identify. So the famous mantra for all designers is, do not design for everyone, right? Because it will completely fail. So do we focus on the super fans, that 3% of fandom, that are on our properties multiple times per day. We of course have, the most extreme, seasonality you could imagine, right?
Yeah.
So we have, we of course have the season, you have preseason, you have draft, you have combine, then you have, the Super Bowl. People come watch the Super Bowl for the commercials. They don't even come for the game, right? So
Yeah.
what then, right? We had a project in our labs team, was pretty successful. It was nicknamed Muncie, and it was basically a voice user interface, which was a guide to be used during the Super Bowl for the non-fans to be able to ask it questions while it's going on, right? So there's a lot of unbelievable layers there. So at the end of the day, you do have to choose, what business are you in? It's my favorite challenge question. And who are you working for, right? And then after that, you have to also make it possible for that range of fandom, that range of football knowledge.
But let's talk about the actual game experience, because when I grew up going to Cardinals games, the only additional experience to watching the game was a bunch of old dudes with AM radio listening to the play-by-play. And now we have our device with us the whole game.
Absolutely.
Some stadiums have betting, people are like, and then you mentioned 5G, different camera angles. How is the experience evolving? How are you planning for it to evolve in the coming years when fans go back, obviously?
Yeah, when fans go back, absolutely. So that's a great question, right? So we have a lot of responsibility there. So first and foremost, we are stewards of the game, right? That is, we are a league and not a company, which is very, very complex actually, right? So we are stewards of the game, and for myself in the UX team and in the larger product team, what we're really trying to ensure is the fan experience, right? And then that gets complicated because we don't necessarily own that direct relationship. That is with the individual club, right? They own the stadium, they own the parking lot. It's their fans, right? There's not NFL fans. There are some. There's super fans that just love football, but really, in most cases, you're a club fan.
Team.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it's very interesting. So to your point, like, how do we advance that experience without removing some of those traditions and removing some of those closely held, kind of experiences? So let's talk about 5G for a minute. So if you put an augmented experience into the stadium, you have to immediately ask the question, am I taking someone away from the visceral in-person, sensory experience of watching the game, right?
Yeah.
The other part that's quite interesting about this, in working with all our fans over the last several years, what I began to realize is that what football really represents for people is actually a way of scheduling the routine in their lives by giving them something that's neutral that they use to connect with family and friends, right? When it's on Sunday, when your team's playing, and you can organize around that. So it becomes an organizing principle. People, it gets them through the winter. They understand when the Super Bowl is. So there's a very powerful part to it that is not essentially apparent. And so when we create the digital interfaces, we're very cognizant of that, right? What does the schedule look like? How does it flow in? How do you know, where you are in the season, where you are in the week? All those things really matter.
For the NFL, you guys are the gold standard in American sports. Where do you guys find inspiration? Is it ESPN, Bleacher Report, these new apps? Is it the NHL, NBA, MLS,
really great question.
whatever? Like, where do you guys look for innovation?
It's a great question. So I'll answer it from my perspective, which is grounded more in the digital experience. And I would bring it back to that really important challenge question, which is, what business are you in? And you initially think we're in the sports business, and we are, of course, right? But the sports operations and the game rules and all of that is contained in a way, and is arguably the main mandate for the league, right? You could say, yes, we are absolutely aware of the other sports leagues and entities. We definitely look to soccer a lot in Europe as well. Mm-hmm. But that is not what I would argue from a digital perspective, the business that we're really in. Our competitors are really the attention economy. It's anything else you can do on your device, which, if that's true, it's frightening, right? Because then it's everyone, right? So I would argue we compete much more directly with Netflix, with Amazon, with TikTok, with Instagram, with Facebook to some degree. But what we look to for inspiration is we are really looking at, okay, like Amazon's got X-ray vision in the video. Could we add something like that where you could tap on the screen and it tells you who the players are on the field, right? Netflix came out with co-watching, which had been an idea that's been rattling around inside the NFL for over 2 years. We're super aware of that idea, especially right now, right? It's like watching football on your own is really fun. Watching it with your friends is way more fun, and watching it in your team's favorite, bar or restaurant is more fun, and then going to the stadium is the most fun, right? So it's a social viewing experience. So how can you, so that's really where we take the inspiration. I would argue the ESPNs, the Bleachers, the Yahoo Sports, and our network partners, that's table stakes, right? So we need to be as good or better than those experiences. It's really that attention economy problem, right? It's really literally everything else.
Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Thomas, thanks again for being on the show, and go Cardinals, obviously.
You're most welcome. It was really enjoyable. Thanks, Alex. I think this is a great series that you're putting together.
Thank you. We appreciate that.